TAC Planning meeting. First item on the agenda is approval of the agenda. Does anybody have any additions or changes to the agenda as presented? And it was just on the screen there, but now it disappeared for some reason. There we go. Hearing no changes to the agenda stands approved as presented. The next item is approval of the November 10th TAC Planning minutes by roll call. Entertain a motion in a second to approve the minutes.
Elaine Kutsukos will make a motion to approve the minutes.
All right, thank you, Elaine.
Mahowald to second that.
Thank you, Steve. Steve Mahold seconds. Any discussion on the minutes? If not, Jed, can you take the roll, please?
Stenson.
Aye.
Picone.
Aye.
Dermody. Reef. Howley. Burns. Kutsukos.
Aye.
Mitiko. Ayo.
Aye.
Forsland.
Aye.
Atkins.
Aye.
Vol.
Aye.
Leitner.
Aye.
Beckwith. I'm sorry, could you repeat that?
Aye.
Corbett. Larson.
Aye.
Abney.
Aye.
Merrick.
Aye.
Mahold.
Aye.
Anyone missed?
Hey, Jed, this is Dave. I joined a minute late. What were we voting on here?
Moved by Katsuko, seconded by Mahold on the minutes.
Oh, aye.
All right, Mr. Chair, we have 14 ayes, no noes, and no abstentions.
Jed, so minutes are approved as presented. Thank you, everybody. The next item is presentation of action transmittal 2023-02, adoption of 2023 safety performance targets. And I believe, I don't know, is that Cole? Are you presenting on that?
No, that's me, Mr. Chair. Jed.
Okay, go ahead, Jed.
All right, just a moment. I will pull up my slides. Are folks seeing the slides okay?
Yes.
Okay. Hi, my name's Jed Hanson. I'm sure most folks here know me. I am one of the planners in MTS Planning. And also joining me today is Heidi Schulberg, who is our lead staff on safety planning at the Met Council. So today's presentation is going to cover our requirements as an MPO for setting safety performance measures, the Met Council's methodology for setting these measures, the proposed targets for 2023, and some context and assessment of prior year performance. Federal requirements for the safety performance final rule, which went into effect in 2018, outline a purpose for setting these safety targets. First, they are to inform planning and programming to reduce fatal and serious injuries on all public roads, and also to track performance of the Federal Highway Safety Improvement Program. State departments of transportation and metropolitan planning organizations alike must establish targets for 5 measures, both for the number of all fatalities and serious injuries, as well as rate targets per 100 million vehicle miles traveled for both measures, as well as a combined measure of non-motorized fatal and serious injuries. MPOs have a few specific requirements within there. They must establish targets that are specific to the metropolitan planning area or agree to establish state DOT targets. In the most recent years, the Met Council has adopted the former method, which is adopting a target specific to the planning area. MPOs are not assessed or penalized by the Federal Highway Administration for failing to make significant progress on the targets, which is different than how state DOTs are treated. They are assessed annually for making significant progress towards their targets, and it can affect how their highway safety improvement dollars are allocated. These targets must be adopted by February 27th annually, which is why we are seeing them today. So they have time to be reviewed by our committees before submitting to MnDOT and the Federal Highway Administration. The methodology that the Council has used in recent years is to set targets on a straight line towards the regional share of the Minnesota Strategic Highway Safety Plan goals. Under this method, targets decline from a 2020-2021 target baseline towards the statewide goals, which are no more than 225 traffic deaths and no more than 980 serious injuries by 2025. When applied to the region's share of those goals are no more than 74 traffic deaths, 464 serious injuries, and 115 pedestrian and bicycle traffic deaths and serious injuries based off of an average of performance prior to 2019. Adoption of these targets is not subject to a specific public comment period. However, the adopted targets do appear in the Transportation Improvement Program. We did not receive comments on the previous safety targets in the most recent TIP. However, the previous TIP, we did receive 9 comments requesting lower safety targets or adoption of a Vision Zero approach to safety planning. This slide shows you the proposed targets. The gray highlighted row here are the targets being considered in the action item today that we've provided for context, the 2 years prior targets and the next 2-year draft targets should this method continue. So the targets under consideration today are 90 fatalities, a third fatalities per 100 million vehicle miles traveled, 600 serious injuries, 2.18 serious injuries per 100 million vehicle miles traveled, and 147 non-motorized fatal and serious injuries. One item I will point out here is that the fatality rate remains the same between 2022 and 2023. And that's because this target is based off of VMT data that changes from year to year. In the previous target setting year of 2022, they are based off the most recent year of available VMT. And in that case, it would have been for 2020. And at the time, a safety targets working group that has met to inform this target setting methodology had recommended to base this target off of 2019 VMT, recognizing that travel in 2020 was significantly down. In this case, we have gone with the most recent year of VMT since it has rebounded, and also noting that excluding the year did not make a substantial difference in this target. That same pattern does not appear in the serious injury rate target because notably there are many more serious injuries, and so the decimal place where this difference shows up is earlier on. For reference, we've included the state targets, though I won't discuss these much here today. The state does use a different methodology for setting its targets than the council does, and in recent years has held over the prior year's targets in certain measures. As I mentioned, the Federal Highway Administration and the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration have some additional regulatory requirements for state DOTs and in our case, the Department of Public Safety and target setting that have influenced some changes to their methodology. Ultimately, these targets are a frame for assessing our region's performance on reaching a goal of reducing fatal and serious injuries. Unfortunately, the region's progress on safety performance has regressed. This table here shows targets relative to actual performance for the past 4 years, with preliminary performance from January through October 31st of this year for 2022. The gray items are where the target was missed, and while in 2019 and 2020, the region was meeting its targets in 2 of the 5 measures. Last year and this year, the region are not on track to meet these targets. In fact, in 2022, performance to date has exceeded the targets that we have been setting since the PM1 rule went into effect. And I'll provide more detail on these measures in the following slides. This slide graphically shows the performance against the fatality target. The solid but faded line shows 2022 target performance to date. For the 7-county metro region only, these targets do cover our whole metropolitan planning area, so also the urbanized portions of Wright and Sherburne counties. And the dashed line shows a trend of, given current year performance and the seasonality of prior years, where performance may be headed if current trends continue. This slide shows the same data, but for the serious injuries measure, noting that serious injuries in 2022 have already exceeded the prior years and have reversed a recent year trend of performance that was slightly better than the target. If trends do continue this year, it looks like the region is on track to potentially approach up to 1,000 serious injuries on our roadways. The graph on the aggregate measure of pedestrian and bicycle fatalities and serious injuries is also similar, reversing previous trends of meeting or slightly performing better than the target. While we report in the targets an aggregate measure of pedestrian and bicycle fatalities and serious injuries as is required by the regulation, we've also broken down this data thanks to some analysis from our friends at MnDOT. And you'll note that in most of these measures, actual performance for each of these measures has exceeded prior year trends and the pre-pandemic average. Bicyclist fatalities are slightly down from the pre-pandemic average, however, noting that these are relatively rare, so variation in 1 or 2 cases can make the percent difference fluctuate here. I'll note that pedestrian and bicyclist serious injuries are up substantially, particularly bicyclist serious injuries, which have doubled over the prior 2 years and are up by half over the pre-pandemic average. The proposed 2023 target setting method continues the method that was adopted in 2021 and 2022 to reduce targets annually to meet that regional share of the 2025 goals in the Strategic Highway Safety Plan. Those targets reduce annually by approximately 8 fatalities, 69 serious injuries, and 17 non-motorized fatal and serious injuries. Now, ultimately, these are targets for assessing our performance and do not determine safety outcomes. The work that we do as a region, both in planning and implementation of transportation projects, determine safety outcomes. And here at the council, we do have a handful of studies that are in part addressing the safety issue. For starters, our work on the transportation policy plan includes a goals review, engagement, and update study, which is under contract with major works starting in 2023. As part of this work, we may engage with policymakers about what would an accountability policy look like for holding our region to account, similar to the way that state DOTs are. This could be considered in our phase 2 and 3 policy engagement or in the workshops as part of this study. Additionally, as part of our regional planning efforts, safety's position in the regional development guides, values, vision, and goals are under consideration by policymakers, and you can expect to hear an update on the progress of this at the meeting immediately following this, the Transportation Policy Plan Technical Working Group. We've also started work on a regional safety action plan, or will start work on this shortly. Part of this will look at a programmatic review of the MPO's safety work, including a review of the regional solicitation criteria and weightings, and other work that the MPO can do to achieve progress towards these targets and ultimately reach 0 deaths and serious injuries on our roadways. With that, thank you for your time and consideration of this measures. Myself and Heidi are here to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you, Jed, for the presentation, and open it up. I have some comments, but I'll open it up to the group first. If you have any comments or questions for Jed on the presentation. Okay, I'm just going to open it up, and maybe this will stir some discussion, but I was on the working group that had the same presentation about a month ago, I think. And I think it's fair to say that most people were somewhat alarmed at the trend that we're seeing, back to 2018 over the last 5 years. We have not met our fatality targets, and it hasn't really been close. And we're also trending in that direction for 2023. And our serious injury targets, like Jed said, we did have a couple years where we met them, I think, in 19 and 20, but the most recent years, we have not met our serious injury targets either, and those are also trending in the wrong direction. I think regardless if there's a federal mandate or not, I think it's just the right thing to do to make an effort to achieve any targets we set as a region. I think it sets a bad message if we don't try to do that. I think most people would probably agree with that. And I don't know, I think we could approve a special policy that holds us accountable, but I think most of us would just feel that we're all accountable regardless if there's a policy or not. As professional planners and engineers, I think we all hold ourselves accountable to the public and the elected officials that we report to take reasonable efforts to meet planning targets that we set for safety or any other measures. And if we're not willing to do that, then I think we should probably do some soul searching and adjust our targets to reflect the current realities that we're achieving. So I guess with that being said, I do appreciate, Jed, you listing some things that the MPO is doing to bend the curve on these things. I think studies are great, but sometimes things get lost in the shuffle, and studies don't actually always translate into actionable activities. So I think I would just encourage us to make sure that the studies that we are undertaking have very specific actionable items that we can tie directly to bending the curve on some of these trends that we're seeing. And I would also challenge us to think if there's other shorter long-term strategies that we haven't been considering that could further bend the curve on some of these results, because people's lives are at stake. So I guess with that, I see a number of hands up in the air, and I'll start with Angie Stenson, and then we'll go to Anna, and then Steve Mahold.
Okay, thank you very much, Chair and committee. My question is actually more technical, although I agree with Scott. Of course, the trends are alarming, so appreciate the discussion about next steps. Do the targets include all crashes in the region, or is it focused just on the state system or the federal aid system, or basically does it include the local system as well? I was trying to just understand it from that standpoint. Thanks.
Mr. Chair, if I may answer, the measures and the performance provided are on all public roads. So any roadway, regardless of system, would be included. but things like private parking lots and private drives would not be included.
Okay, excellent. Thank you.
Anna Pierce, do you want to go ahead?
Hi, thanks, Mr. Chair. I just wanted to clarify, so are you specifically, Mr. Chair, were you saying just you want to make sure that there are actions being taken and projects being funded to help support the safety targets? Or are you proposing that the safety targets actually be adjusted upward to be more reflective of the current situation?
I guess I'm not ruling anything in or out. I'm just suggesting that the current process that we're following is obviously not resulting in the results that we need to meet our targets. And so I think that could be the changes could be a combination of increased investment, changes to policies. There's also, maybe some coordination we need to be doing with MnDOT or the State Patrol or other agencies. This isn't just an MPO issues that, this is a broad issue that transcends a number of jurisdictions. So I think it's a combination of, political or policy strategy and perhaps investment changes in our regional solicitation process, and then coordination of whatever changes that we want to make with the relevant agencies.
Okay, thanks for the clarification, because safety is such a broad issue that I think sometimes we can do as much as we can with investment. But there is like that other side of it of, is it just driver behavior? Is it also enforcement? Is it roadway design? What is it? There are so many factors when it comes to safety. So I just wanted to make sure that it was clear on kind of what, if you were in support of the current proposal that Jed presented, or if there needs to be further discussion on if the safety targets should be revised. So, and that's why MnDOT has chosen to maintain our safety targets for these 2 years, because from last year, was because there is just a lot of unknown and a lot of changes from the pandemic and all the things. So.
Right, and that's all. I appreciate that input, Anna. I think that's all very relevant observations, and we don't want to be overreacting either to a point in time. But there has been about a 5-year trend now, pre-COVID, where this has been happening, and I guess just my concern is if we're continually setting targets that are not being achieved, then the targets really kind of lose their meaning. So if it's an achievable target that we can say that we're making measurable progress toward achieving through some documented strategies, then I think, that's certainly a good approach. But to continually set targets that are not being achieved, I guess I'm questioning if that's really the right approach.
Thank you for clarifying.
Let's go to Casey and then Steve Mahold.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I apologize. My video doesn't seem to be working right now. Casey Atkins with Hennepin County. Just listening to this discussion, I would encourage us to hold the goals this year that Jed just presented. I think it's good to have goals that are that push us really to reevaluate and think through what we're doing. A phrase I've always worked with the people I've been around is engineering good behavior, right? There are a lot of things we can do in our industry and combined with other industries to really make a difference. And I think we need to take a good hard look at our design guidance, our policies, and say what will really push us in that direction. On all agencies, there are a lot of things that you can see while driving, walking, rolling, or biking about. And I think we need that push to be able to make that real progress and see that downward trend instead of this upward trend, especially when it comes to our vulnerable users. Thank you.
Mr. Chair, Steve Mahowald here. This question for council staff in particular. I think Vision Zero, has been largely focused on design, perhaps a bit on education. But I think it's probably clear to all of us that there's an enforcement piece that is missing. And without that, I think we're going to continue the struggle. And I think there's data from Europe that shows that. So my question for council staff is, there is a bill that's going to be in front of the legislature this next session. I think it's being brought by the city of Minneapolis. And are we, the council, going to be supporting this bill for traffic or photo enforcement? I think we all realize that in terms of having bodies out there, police officers, that's perhaps not the best way, and it's not very achievable. But in terms of photo enforcement, I think this is something we need to try, personally, that we need to try again. And I'm wondering what the council's position is going to be in terms of supporting this bill in front of the legislature. Thank you.
Mr. Chair, if I could invite either Heidi Schallberg or Steve Peterson, who manages safety planning at the council, to respond to that one.
Absolutely, go ahead.
This is Heidi. I can start, and then if Steve wants to add or correct anything, let him jump in. Thank you, Steve, for bringing that up. Certainly know that Minneapolis has been doing a lot of work with Vision Zero, and that they've been discussing bringing that forward. I think, that's something that, of course, would need to have some discussions at levels higher than those of us in this meeting. But as we get the specifics for that, I think that would be something we'd be happy to take back to our leadership and have that conversation. I will just speak for myself individually. I think that's something that a lot of people in the safety area have been looking for the ability to do in Minnesota, and that does require state legislative action to enable that and support that. So, Steve, if you have anything else you want to add.
No, good summary. I think you're right. It's likely discussions above us that would need to ensue once the details are made a little bit more public. So, yep, good answer. Thanks.
Innocent, I think you're next.
Yes, Mr. Chair. My questions for Heidi or Jed. On the research you have done to prepare the report or the plan, are there real specific reasons that maybe you guys found that is the reasons why the injuries or the issue keep on increasing for the 5 years now, and more exceeding the target that you guys set in 2022? Did you find, was it due to speed, inattentive driving, or what type of policy that we're lacking that we should have maybe included as part of the reason to reach the zero date in the year that we set up?
Thank you for your question, Innocent. And Mr. Chair, I'll initially respond here and invite Heidi to jump on if there's any additional response. At this point in time, we're reporting top-line data that describes total performance, and we have not undertaken systemic analysis on individual crash causes. However, a closer look at this will be taken in the Regional Safety Action Plan work underway shortly.
Yep, I don't have anything to add. That's fine.
Go ahead. Did you have a follow-up comment, Heidi?
No, I just said I don't have anything to add. Jed covered it. So.
Okay. All right.
In addition to that, there, I can't remember, I think it was last year, there was a report, or safety report, that was also showing that the most of the serious injuries occur in the EJ area. I don't know, we didn't know exactly why it happened in those areas. Is it something we're lacking or some policies? because at that time it was shown that majority of the serious injuries or crashes seem to happen in the EJ areas in the state.
Thank you, and that's a good point. Appreciate that.
I can just briefly speak to that if you want, Mr. Chair.
Go ahead, Heidi.
So on the pedestrian safety action plan that we just wrapped up and are working to get the different elements of that online, we did look at for EJ for environmental justice, the factors are race and ethnicity or low income, and we did ask the consultant to take a look at that. With crash data, of course, we only get the race data for the individual involved, only for fatalities. So otherwise, we're looking at kind of the demographics and where the crashes are happening. And we definitely did see disproportionate impacts, especially on Black and Native American populations in the region in relation to pedestrian fatalities and serious injuries. So that is something that we will definitely be looking at again in the next study that we'll be doing, that will be focused on motor vehicle crashes and then bicycle vehicle crashes as well. And I know I've also seen some of those reports that is like even nationwide, I think that trend is not always held true for all crash types, but I think that's kind of a developing trend that's being seen. So that's something that we'll be taking a look at. As far as why there's kind of more work to be done in that area to kind of drill down to identify some of those things. I know on the pedestrian safety study, the consultant also did use our historic redlining data for, where there were more racist federal housing policies and practices for real estate lending. And that's not a causation thing, but there was correlation with where those crashes were happening for Minneapolis and St. Paul at least, and the fatalities and serious injuries for pedestrians.
Yeah, thank you.
And we are getting close to our time here, but I think just to capsulize, I think what I'm hearing is that people are not obviously happy with the trends that are emerging. It has been a 5-year trend of being above, our fatals being above the targets, and the serious injuries are also trending in the wrong direction. While we don't want to overreact, we don't want to underreact either, I think, as a region. There's a number of agencies involved here, obviously, Met Council, MnDOT, State Patrol, and others, cities and counties, design, policy, project investment choices of Met Council and MnDOT and cities and counties all play into this. And it's good to see that the MPO has studies underway to evaluate some of this, but I think we're all in agreement that more needs to be done, and the status quo is not achieving the goals that we want to achieve. So I think I would encourage, I think the message that I'm going to carry forward to the TAC, and I would encourage others to carry forward as well, is that we need to be doing more, but it's good to have aspirational goals, like Casey said, to challenge all of us. I think those are some of the messages that I'm going to be carrying forward to TAC on this. And the motion that staff would like us to entertain, if anybody would like to make this motion, is that TAC Planning Committee recommend that TAC recommend that the Met Council adopt the 2023 safety performance targets in Table 1 as presented. Would anybody like to make that motion?
I can make that motion. This is Atkins.
Casey makes the motion. Is there a second?
This is Dave. I'll second, but I would just like to note, like, not officially within the motion, but there has been a number of changes in our regional solicitation scoring, just as one example, over the past few years. So I think it is a partnership, and I think that the MPO is doing its part. Maybe we could do more, but we are working on improving safety performance throughout the region as well.
All right, thank you, Dave. Dave seconds the motion. Any further discussion? All right, Jed, can you take the roll, please?
Yes. Stenson.
Aye.
Picone.
Aye.
Dermody, Reef, Howley,
Aye.
Burns,
Aye.
Katsukos,
Aye.
Mitiko, Ao,
Aye.
Forsland,
Aye.
Atkins,
Aye.
Vol,
Aye.
Leitner,
Aye.
Beckwith,
Aye.
Corbett,
Aye.
Larson,
Aye.
Abney,
Aye.
Merrick,
Aye.
Maholt.
Aye.
Mr. Chair, there are 16 ayes, no nos, and no abstentions.
All right, thank you, Jed. So the motion